As with most things online, if you find yourself spending too much time with any particular Genshin Impact community, you have likely entered an echo chamber, where you hear the same opinions over and over again, causing you to start believing some things that might not even be true. Because of this, I asked you for your Genshin Impact hottest takes, so I can encounter some new perspectives. I'll be rating each take on how much I agree with it, as give it a rating on how many GN chilies out of 5 it ranks for hotness. Welcome to Jello Impact, where we build and test every single character to help you decide who you want to wish for and build. Naturally, we have Moika up in the corner, our resident hottie, helping us rank, and then we have our GN chili meter, where we can give it different rankings for spiciness, starting with the first one. Every time they release a character, if it is a support, you don't even need to read what the character does. Just slap on Favonius and it has a 90% chance of being optimal. Well, I definitely think I agree with this, but I will take a quick look at our character list just to make sure. But I don't think it's that hot of a take. So they specifically talked about characters that have been released. Looking at recently released units, it's not, I don't know if it's optimal on a row run, but it's pretty darn good. Shalonen for free-to-play Shalonen, usually Favonius is optimal. Kachina, you do want to build Kachina for damage, but you can use Favonius. Siegeween, pretty much if you don't have an HP bow. Other support characters, Shanyun, one of the few characters that doesn't really want Favonius. You prefer something with a higher base attack, but if you have nothing else, then Favonius. Chevreuse can go either way if you need the energy. I think the reality is Favonius is almost never optimal, or usually not optimal, but it's usually the best accessible option because most people have a bunch of Favonius and most teams could use some more energy. Most supports need some energy. And so I would just adjust this to say 90% chance of being solid, or being a really good choice, or being one of the better free-to-play choices, or being an optimal accessible choice. The fact that no meta content creator made videos on how to defeat Natlan local legends and gain all the achievements makes me think that these people are still bound to the abyss. I think local legends are also more endgame oriented. Killing polychrome tri-stars within 10 seconds of each other feels more difficult than the abyss, and no meta content creators I watched gave strategies and team recommendations for that. This is a really interesting one. I kind of feel like I really wanted to make content on the local legends. Polychrome tri-stars. Yeah, I had a lot of fun defeating these guys. But the reality is achievement, well, there's a couple things here. First of all, achievement hunting is something that almost nobody cares about. I don't care about it and nobody else cares about it. I didn't even know that there was an achievement for defeating them within 10 seconds of each other. Achievements just don't give enough rewards. If they gave you a full wish or something for each achievement, then maybe. I think they should have like high-end achievements for like really hard things like this, that you get more rewards than just 5 or 10 primo gems. Like give me 100 or more. And second of all, because the reality is, why do people do the abyss? Most people do it because you get a bunch of rewards. And for a content creator, it's also an easy way to test team strategy, since you start the chambers with energy and you can simulate similar runs and you can recreate times, and there's a timer. There's no timer for the local legends, unless I'm misremembering. So there's no timer, there's no rewards. You can just spend as long as you want sort of cheesing it. And across the board, I don't even make guides on how to beat the abyss anyways. People aren't really that interested on my abyss guides. I think Sevi Plays, when she was doing the guides, they did pretty well. Maybe I should start again making guides for the abyss. But it wasn't really content that people were that excited about or that interested in. And with Imaginarium Theater, even less so. And since this has even less rewards, then people care about it even less. So that's why I didn't make it, basically because I just didn't think that people would care about it. I totally forgot to give hotness ranking for the first one. I'm going to give it 1 out of 5 GN chilies. I just don't think Favonius being an optimal choice is a very hot take. And for the second one, I think this is a reasonably hot take. I'm going to give you 3 GN chilies, but I don't agree with your take, just because I don't think that the videos are videos that people would be interested in. I might be wrong, but that's what I think. Ease of use, especially in Overworld, is more important than strength when it comes to suggesting units for newer players. Ease of use, especially in Overworld. So they're actually saying characters that are easier to use in the overworld is more important than strength when it comes to suggesting units for newer players. You know what? I kind of agree with that. And I think it's a pretty hot take. I think I'm going to beef up my overworld section of my character guide and review. I think I'm going to add a new player section in which I include, like, it's going to be new player and overworld. Because I do agree, it is very important. Is it more important? I don't think so. Simply because even if a character is easy to use in the overworld, that doesn't necessarily matter, because if a character is strong and not easy to use in the overworld, they're still strong enough to use in the overworld, and it's still easy enough to use in the overworld. I don't think you specifically need to prioritize ease of use in the overworld. So I agree with this take in spirit, not exactly, but I definitely do want to make some changes based on this line of thinking. So I definitely overall agree. And I'm going to give you 4 out of 5 G-Un chilies. I think that's a pretty hot take. Although I think when people hear it, they agree, but I don't think people really agree right off the gate. We need more consistent Hangout releases. I don't agree. And I think it's a pretty hot take. I don't think people really like Hangouts that much. Maybe 3.5 chilies. The problem with Hangouts is that they're boring. And I think that they've stopped doing Hangouts. So that's because people don't do them. The desert was actually fun. Not only was it beautiful and aesthetically pleasing, but with well-made system, sand dynamics and stunning visuals. I love feeling like a real Tomb Raider. I actually agree. I do think this is a pretty hot take, and I do like the desert. 4G and chilies for you. There are enough endgame relevant things in Mondstadt, characters and lore, that we're going to get another Mondstadt Archon quest, which also neatly explains why the start of the game was only a prologue instead of a chapter. I definitely agree we're going to go back to the Mondstadt for the end game, for sure. And I think I've heard this a fair bit, so I'm going to give you just 1 G-Un chili, but I agree. Genshin releases a new character, uses Bennett. You sound upset about that. Not a hot take. In fact, you get 0 G-Un chilies for that one. Come on, let's get some spicy takes in here. Power creep exists in Genshin, but in a different form. Abyss blessing, enemy placement, enemy resistance, in a way that you need specific teams and our vertical investment to be able to clear. That is not power creep. And there's definitely power creep. It's been a bit of a slow creep, but new units are generally much stronger than old units, to the degree that you're almost always better off getting the newer units rather than old units, which wasn't always the case, but it's definitely the case now, especially if you compare to really old units. Obviously, there's specific examples that are not the case, but in general, there definitely is power creep, and it's not this. So I wouldn't really say this is a very hot take. Well, I mean, it's kind of a hot take the way you're saying it, but it's also kind of just wrong. A lot of people don't know what a hot take is. True, and also not a hot take. I find Imaginary Theater more fun than Spiral Abyss. It's not perfect, but the variety of character profiles and RNG makes it fun. Makes it so that every few runs you get a team comp so bizarre that make the buffs work just enough that they feel so much more satisfying. I don't find it more fun than Spiral Abyss, but I definitely find it fun that we have both. I think it's a pretty hot take, though. I'm going to give you 4 to say that it's more fun than Spiral Abyss. But I definitely think I do think a bunch of people would agree with you. So maybe 3.5 chilies. And I don't think it's more fun, but I do think it's very fun. So Timmy is a Fatui agent. That's the bird guy, right? Okay. How well a character performs in a vacuum kind of doesn't matter when every Abyss lately restricts team competitions can excel and pushes you towards building for the content in front of you. Flexibility and utility are super underrated compared to raw damage. I guess by in a vacuum you mean like in their best team and against like a static enemy, or just like how much damage that they do. This has always been the case though. Like the Abyss has always been very restrictive. Like we had a triple elemental shield one was my first Abyss. There's always been kind of a ebb and flow of how much Genshin pushes raw damage and how much they push elemental checks and different things. I can see what you mean about flexibility and utility are super underrated compared to raw damage, like how many teams a character can use or how well you can slot like an elemental check character onto the team. It's hard to say that it's super underrated though, because oftentimes raw damage will still be able to take care of things. I'd say this is most true at like a mid to low and like a low to mid investment, and then when you get to high investment, it kind of evens out in the wash anyways. If your character is good enough, then I think that's what makes a character so good, is when they are so strong that even when the Abyss restricts you, they can still push through. But I think flexibility is something to consider. But if they're strong enough, then even if you're using a team comp that isn't optimal, they're still strong enough to do it. So strength kind of comes from, or flexibility can often come from strength. So I'd say it's a reason. It's like a you know, it's a 3-star take, and I mostly agree. This is Severus Festival was actually really fun to play through. Is this not fun? It kept me guessing. Is generally one of my favorite quests. I mean, I loved it too, like Inception stuff. I didn't know that that was a hot take, so I thought this was a normal take. I don't know. Why in the Tavad is no one talking about multi-reaction based teams like Overload with Melt? Genshin has just brought Chaska, who can potentially be a driver to these types of reactions. And maybe we'll find some multi-reaction teams, especially Exception, very niche Dori-driven teams. Can you give me like an example of what you mean? Like Overload with Melt, like what would that look like? Like Chaska, Bennett, Auroron, Shenhe? The thing is, if you're gonna melt, you kind of want to melt. So that's why no one talks about them. But if you have an idea for a specific team, then let me know. Klee is actually a pretty good character and can drive Overload quite well. Yes, it is a hot take. I'm gonna give you 4 Jiun Chilies for this one. And you're completely right. Klee is a good character. Klee is not that much worse than Linny, Hu Tao, even Arlecchino. They're closer than you think. That's just that, and that just goes to show how much closer the lower tier characters are to the higher tier characters. It's not that far off. Klee is quite a good character. I want more physical oriented characters. And yes, I know the philosophy of the game is interacting with elements, but I feel sad that only one reaction exists in making physical possible. I 100% agree. I don't know if this is a hot take. I don't think so. I wish for more creative changes in Sembo charge attacks. I know we have Ganyu, Tighnari, Linny, and probably Sethos and yoimiya. Not yoimiya, but their charge attacks are more or less the same with the entire bow cast charge attack. I guess I'm wondering what you mean by creative changes. I think that, you know, Tighnari especially is a very interesting take, and Sethos are an interesting take on charge attack characters. Linny as well with the stacking mechanic. So I think that they are, and do I wish for more in addition to that? Absolutely. I guess Chaska is sort of a take on it as well, although I'm not as much of a fan of the style. But overall, I agree with both. I think your takes are not too hot. I'll just give them a middle ground 3. My take is the community doesn't have any original hot takes. Yeah, I mean, so far I've found these takes not that hot. And that's kind of why I wanted to do this video, is to see if we could get any out of there. But I wish that you had given us a hot take. You could have, this comment is good, but if you'd given me a hot take, then that would have made this comment better. Xiangling is kind of bad, actually, since she has high energy cost burst and her skill doesn't help her case since it's a bear who misses the target. It's kind of true. She is kind of bad at a lot of the roles that she ends up being used in because there's no other options. But she is definitely kind of bad. And I do agree. She's not bad, but she is definitely kind of bad. So I'm going to give that 4.5 Jiun Chilies because she is broken, but she also is kind of bad. So I've heard it from some people, but not too many. So I'll still give you the Chilies. Burgeon's kind of bad. And it isn't too bad, but it's sort of not worth it. You really want to play Hydro characters in those teams. It's just better. I guess the thing is, it's just sort of better to do single target damage than AoE. And the good Hydro applicators are sort of single target. And Burgeon really needs a healer. So like you can, like, the problem is that just like the teaming. You have to run Ayato basically, because if you run Xingqiu or Yelan, then you basically might as well run Hyper Bloom because they're so single target. So you have to run Ayato, and you need Toma to proc the Burgeons, but Toma doesn't heal unlike Kuki, and Burgeon needs a healer, so you have to run Nahida and like Baiju, and then it's like, and then you can't run another damage dealer. So that's why I think Burgeon kind of is bad. It's more restrictive than Hyper Bloom because Hyper Bloom doesn't require a healer from the cores exploding, whereas Burgeon does. So yeah, people need to stop claiming the characters who won't work with Farina are considered bad or not usable. Do people do this? I don't think people do this. So this is wrong and not a hot take. I hate Xiangling. You get 0 Chilies and you need to sit down. Not a hot take. Auroron should have been named Orororon. Disagree. Should have been named Ororororororon. Farming artifacts is RNG hell, but it's a personal choice. It's very true. I actually agree with this. And even if you're a content creator, still no one's forcing you to farm for 0.5% more crit rate. Rotations ER are more important. Cursey Xiangling. True. I definitely agree with this. Farming artifacts is not as bad as people say because you don't have to do it as much. And I do think that's a pretty hot take. So I'm going to give you 4 Jiun Chilies, and I agree with that. Colorism. For a Chinese game, they have the best possible representation in every aspect. That is a super hot take. I'm gonna give you 5 Jiun Chilies for that, and I will not say whether I agree with that or not. I do agree that that Genshin is a bit better than people say. I still agree that it's not as good as it should be. Easy to use does not equal fun and better play. Totally agree. But that is, I don't know if it's a hot take or not. 3 out of 5. Might be a little too hot, but I think Zhao is not a #1 Zhao player. Wow. I don't know how good Ziox is at Zhao, and I don't know who the top Zhao players is, so no comment. Inazuma's Archon Quest was overhated. It's a good idea, and I think it was executed fairly well. Super hot take. I'll give you 4.5, and I agree. The idea that Genshin meta is bad or ruins the fun is stupid. We already heard that take. Genshin is easier to start now. I do agree. Genshin's still a good game for new players. Not a single piece of advice from 1.0 Genshin content creators was ever useful. I don't know. I wasn't playing it during 1.0, but it sounds right. Genshin is one of the most generous gacha games I've ever played. I don't think people new to the scene realize just how generous Genshin's 70 to 90 pity and 50-50 system that transfers between banners is. And it also has a lot less power creeps. You're not constantly feeling like you have to pull for new shiny units. This is a super hot take. I'm going to give you 5 G and chilies for saying that Genshin is one of the most generous gacha games you've ever played. And I have no idea if it's true or not, realistically. I've only played... Genshin was my first game. So my understanding is that it's not super generous, but that it's not bad. I feel like people do overhate their generosity. Since the end of Fontaine and Natlan, I feel like there was a ball of negativity that was building steam for Genshin with them not doing quality of life and not doing like rewards and stuff. There was like a ball of negativity brewing, but now they've pretty much quelled it. Mika's an underrated character. His speed increase is great for Claymore DPS and normal attack DPS. Maybe he's underrated, but he's not great for Claymore characters because a lot of their slowness is hit lag and not animation, which Mika doesn't help with. You can never tell how much you'll feel the lack of a character from TC cheats, trials, and CC reviews. For me, Sano's one of my favorite characters. He's not optimal use of Primogems, but I love him. I wouldn't trade him for C6 Neuvillette. I'm going to give you like a 3 out of 5 G and chilies. It's a decently hot take. In a way, feel the lack of a character. I guess you're kind of more talking about how much you like your characters, but I do agree. I've been really recommending people, pushing hard lately for people to just go for characters that they like the gameplay of. I think that's really, really important, especially that with the new characters are mostly very good. You don't need to pull any DPSs, and their pull value will never beat the broken supports. That is the coldest take I've ever seen. 1 chili, 0 chilies. Genshin Impact's kind of a hard game. Imagine without looking up guides, YouTube videos. That's absolutely true. If Genshin Impact was released before the internet, it would have been a hard game. People, I'm gonna give you like 4 out of 5 chilies. I do agree though, because these days the only types of hard that exist is mechanical hard, which is the actual difficulty of pushing buttons on the game, whereas back in the day knowledge was a way of making a game hard, and that's the type of hard that Genshin is. And so I really like that, and I like that type of hard, but the internet ruins it if you look it up. So I actually agree with you, and that's a pretty hot take. Fischl is the best 4-star in the game. Maybe she's the second best, only worse than Farina. She can be slotted in literally any team and will still be more than enough to clear the content. I definitely don't agree with that. Fischl is very good, but her damage isn't high enough to make a claim like this, in my opinion. And it is nice if you consider the fact that she's a 4-star and you can get her in the Star Glitter shop. That's nice. But for example, you can also use Yaimiko or Kujosara on teams and get very similar results. And there's a lot of teams where you can just use someone else. So I don't think she's often the best, but I think that she's kind of like Xiangling in that she's really good, but we just don't have that many characters that do exactly what she's doing. And I feel like the thing that people... Like, if you really count the flexibility and the fact that she doesn't need to build energy because you just use her skill and that's it, then sure. But like, Aggravate isn't even that good, and you often don't use her on Chevre's teams. And then, so like, what teams is she actually best in slot in? She's very flexible, but she's not really the peak of very many teams. So I agree that she's very good, but I don't think that she's like the second best character in the game. Neuvillette might end up like Ganyu in 1 to 2 years. Oh, but that for a hot take, I would give you 4.5 stars, maybe 5 stars for saying that she's the second best character in the game. 5 chilies. Neuvillette ending up like Ganyu in 1 to 2 years. He's very comfortable to play right now, but when enemies are getting tougher in the future, he won't be as popular as he is right now. Wow. Definitely 5 chilies for that take. I think the thing about Neuvillette is that his damage is still very good. Even though damage of other DPSs is close, maybe sometimes better, his damage is still very, very good, and he has the best AoE in the game. So I think to say if he falls off like Ganyu, then that will mean all of the DPSs have fallen off a good bit, unless other DPSs get buffed without him getting buffed. So I don't think I see it, to be honest, but that'd be cool. That'd be cool. It'd be interesting. Lisa's a strong character. 4 chilies. And she had a bit of resurgence with Neuvillette and Aggravate, but now Aggravate is kind of getting worse and worse, and Neuvillette has better options. So I don't think she's a strong character. I think she's an okay character. Genshin's storytelling is bad. Oh god, not a hot take. Especially the first part, we need to skip replay options. Yeah, this is not a hot take. Should be more 4 stars than 5 stars. It does make sense intuitively. I think this would only work if they made 4 stars. Like, this 4-star problem is such a problem that this should not be true. This would be really bad if this was true, to be honest. Yunjin being a normal attack buffer is more interesting in fun teams than Shenyan playing plunge attacks. Nah. Theoretically, yes, but in practice, the buff is not nearly strong enough. Sucrose is massively underrated. I don't think people realize how much of a buff she'll receive when the new reactions get buffed. I don't think she's massively underrated, but I think these days she's a little underrated. So I'll give you two G and chilies. And she was buffed a decent bit. Wasn't crazy though. Tighnari is a stronger DPS than Alhaitham. I mean, single target, technically he can be. He's more consistent, deals greater single target damage, and Nahida compensates for an AoE troubles. That I don't agree with. She doesn't do that much damage. He has more options for gear. No need to use a 3-star weapon. Both of them can use a 3-star weapon really well. Wants Wanderer's Troop. Aesthetic well, technically he wants Gilded Dreams. And is easier to acquire constellations of. Okay, this one you're potentially right. Because his constellations, especially if you can get him to C6, is amazing. So if we're comparing C0 to C0, then I disagree. If we're talking about you can easily acquire constellations of him, then I absolutely agree. And I think that's a viable strategy. But that is an insanely hot, spicy take. You get 5 Geo and chilies for that. Congratulations. And I kind of agree if we're including constellations. I like dungeon crawling, and the chasm is one of my favorite areas. Totally agree. Shenling's damage is bad outside of Child Vape. It's pretty good in Raiden National too. And it's good in Chevrolet teams as well. Having to build a litany of characters to be legible for the theater is killing my enjoyment of the game. Oh, I'm sorry. I really like that it encourages people to build more characters, personally. Hopefully when you build them all, then you don't have to continually build new ones. But I can see what you mean. Siege Rune's not that bad. It's a really hot take. 5 G and chilies for Siege Rune's not that bad. And you're wrong. She just doesn't do anything. I have been a Siege Rune defender, but then they released Shalona a couple patches later, and now there's never a reason to play Siege Rune ever now. So yeah. Dori's overrated and overhated. Yep. Most people say they don't care about meta, but in reality, most of them make meta characters their favorite to keep up with others. Hilarious. I don't know if that's true. Yeah, it was not just the most flexible, useful 4-star Dendro character, but equal in universal value the other common 4-stars like Kuki, Fischl, Sucrose, or Xiangling. Her lack of reliance on constellations for a kit makes it one of the easiest to build. True. Her dual healing. I just feel like Yao Yao doesn't do that much. Not enough Dendro to really matter that much for a lot of teams. And she doesn't do any buffing or damage. I don't know. People saying any character can clear the abyss and game content with good investment. I agree. It's super misleading. You're much more likely to be around to get strong characters before you can build your weak characters well. Many people believe Farina could 5 times or 10 times your damage on a Neuvillette team. I apologize if I ever gave you that impression. I agree with your first one, but I think it's a reasonably hot take. I'm going to give you 3.5. Geo is unironically better element than Cryo. That would have been a hot take like a year or 2 ago, but nowadays pretty much most people agree. Risley's the best crowd DPS. Also maybe a hot take. I mean, I hope you think it is. That's the point of this thread. Not a hot take though, and I think it's true. Hyper Bloom is a balanced reaction that's good as people say. You're correct nowadays. It's not that hot anymore. 3 out of 5. Again, 2 years ago, this is a pretty hot take. Nowadays, you're absolutely correct, but that's because we've had power creep since then. Navi is the best DPS in the game. I can see what you're saying. Doesn't have Melania's clunkiness, deals more damage in single target than Neuvillette, and not as fragile as Arlecchino. Hey, I know what you mean. That's how I feel about Clorand. Neuvillette's overrated. Because he's easy and not because of higher numbers? Yes. I wouldn't necessarily say that's overrating him though, because easiness is part of it. Miko is a better unit than people give her credit for. Not that much worse than Clorinde. So she's actually closer, like using her as a Fischl replacement is better than people think, especially if you don't have to use her burst every rotation to extend rotations and stuff like on Raiden teams. But I agree, she is a better unit than people give her credit for, both on field and off field. A lot of people overhype Kazuha. Totally agree. Now that Shalonen's out, you're a bit late to the party, so you only get 3 chilies, but I've been saying this forever. Mulaney's only the strongest DPS on paper. In practice, it reset more than a Eula main. I do reset, and I do get better clears than my other characters. Whether or not that you think that makes her better is up to you. She's also the strongest DPS. It really depends on what you mean by strongest DPS. So for me, it's a factor that you can reset to get an even better clear. But I definitely think it is a factor. I think it's an important thing to consider. So yeah, she is extremely strong if you use her properly. I think she's also harder to play than people think. And most of the time when people say Mulaney's bad, I think it's a skill issue. That's my hot take. I think those are my 2 hot takes. That 1, that Mulaney is the best DPS in the game, and 2, that Clorinde is one of the better DPSs. Those are my 2 really hot takes, but I totally get that Mulaney is really annoying and hard to use, and if you think that makes her worse, and also resetting, and if you don't like resetting, and if those things make her worse, then of course I would rate her lower on a tier list just because people don't like those things. And Clorinde, I don't really know. I think maybe it's because maybe the 5-star weapon really makes a big difference, but I think she's gonna get a buff from Moika, so we'll see. We'll see. Let me know your hot takes down in the comments. There's more here, but we don't have time to get through everything. So let me know anything else. Take care. Bye for now.